do we make use of these opportunities? Do we exploit them, if I can use that word, for the benefit of the African continent and its people? Now, that challenge has to be posed to Africans themselves.
Welcome to our latest IATP explainer video. This week we are joined by Phumlani Majozi. Phumlani is a well-known commentator on economic, political, and social issues. As a senior fellow at African Liberty, he makes constant appearances in a variety of media outlets. Between 2010 and 2020, South Africa experienced poor economic growth. Annual GDP growth rarely exceeded 2% per year, and in most years, average incomes fell. What explains South Africa's poor economic growth?
Well, there are a number of issues that have repressed South Africa's economic growth, and those issues have largely have to do with domestic policy. And one of those policies is basically the state control over the power supply that has had a huge negative impact on South Africa's economy, because when you have one entity that is owned by government trying to supply electricity to about 60 million people, you are definitely going to have issues. Where the government of South Africa has failed has been to open up the energy market to allow for independent power, private sector producers to come in and produce electricity. That has never been there in South Africa. And because of government failure, we are now, or we have seen over the past 10 years, South Africa experiencing consistent, persistent, never-ending power outages or power blackouts. So the energy policy has been quite very much destructive. In fact, we have had a number of recessions that can be attributed to the power outages problems. Why? Because government has totally failed to liberalize the energy market and to allow for the private sector to be the supplier as well of electricity. Only one state-owned government company has been allowed to do that. So that's one element of what repressed South Africa's economy, and a very important one. The other one is the regulatory environment. The regulations in South Africa, their regulations have been very much anti-market, anti-growth, anti-business in various ways. We have the laws that are very much protective or advance more the interests of workers, not really the interests of creating a society where business and people can get into sort of labor agreements for them to determine whether it's things related to employment, whether it's things related to wages. Government has intervened again and again in that space. Therefore, we have seen very much damage in terms of the regulatory environment. We are in a society where we see a lot of the labor unions being very much powerful in pushing public policy in their favor. So that has been quite damaging. I have argued that South Africa needs its own Margaret Thatcher kind of a leader who will be determined to take the labor unions head on, not to say they should not exist, but to keep them in their place so they know that they don't have much influence in our society. So that has been quite a problem. The regulations in the economy, again, that have been increased by the government. Another one is also the tax policy. The tax policy in South Africa has been very much a damaging factor as well. We look at the tax rates. When you compare various African countries, Botswana, Mauritius, Tanzania, and so on, the tax rates, the personal income tax rates, South Africa has right high up there. We have the highest when you look at those numbers on average. When you also look at the tax burden across the emerging markets, South Africa is amongst the top 2 or whatever countries, or top 3 or so. The tax burden amongst the citizens has also had a negative impact, because we've seen taxes rising again and again in South Africa. And we know the basic rules of economics, that if we increase taxes, we're not going to get a productive economy that produces more of goods and services. So that's the third element of that. Another one is a continuous increase in government spending in South Africa. We have seen again and again government continuing to increase government spending. When we look at the data from the mid-1990s up until today, the levels of government spending in South Africa, they have been quite not good. And it's not a spending, and it's not a spending on investment. It's a spending on consumption. That's where most of the money goes into, and that has been a problem. Government right now is trying to look into how they control the spending, trying to get it into the right place. They have set targets, including targeting the public sector wage bill, which is massive. So there has been a recognition that the government spending it's something that needs to be under control. So those macro issues I have outlined have been very much been a factor in repressing South Africa's economy, and they are largely domestic factors. They're not foreign factors. Domestic policy in South Africa has been instrumental in repressing the economy and not allowing for faster growth and more employment opportunities.
With the ANC's share of the vote declining in every election, to what extent do you think South Africa's poor economic growth can be attributed to the ANC kowtowing to far-left parties with whom they may soon have to form a political coalition?
The history of the ANC is quite a very interesting one, because over the years of its governance, over the past almost 30 years now of its governance, there has been various elements within the party that were more sensible, that were pro-growth, that were more pro-business, pro-liberalizing the economy. So there has been the elements within the party over the years. But also there were elements that were very much also affiliated with the ANC. Those elements were sort of more of leftist, far left groups. The South African Communist Party is one of those. Right, it's been with an alliance with the ANC over the past 30 years now, and they shape policy. It has an influence in the ANC, so that has been quite negative. So that's the South African Communist Party, and then you have the Congress of South African Trade Unions, which is COSATU, a big sort of labor union or trade union, has also been a partner with the ANC over the past 30 years. So again, the COSATU union is more sort of left, of an organization, and all those things they sort of such groups, they pressure the ANC to move to the left. Now, that has been the case. It's been hard to find people who are opposed to that alliance, the alliance or the partnership of the ANC, the political party that governs South Africa. The South Africans voted for, with the South African Communist Party and COSATU. Right? It's been hard to find people who oppose that alliance. There are, but they are very few. But many people say, well, it's for the good of the country. They have to coordinate and formulate policy, but there are people who can see that this alliance has been damaging, because it's an alliance really that has resulted in the ANC moving to the left. And South Africans, as the support of the ANC declines, it doesn't have to do with the fact that South Africans are saying, well, we are opposed or we don't like the alliance between the ANC COSATU and the Communist Party. It's not because of that, but it's because of the actual change on the ground. They don't see it, right? Well, there is change, but it's a negative change. Unemployment continues to rise. It's at a shocking level, the number of people who are unemployed in the country. Crime rate, we rank amongst the top 5 in homicide rates in the world. People are dying as crazy, the level of crime in South Africa. Corruption, all those things. It's on those bases, the poor service delivery, the potholes on the roads, the crumbling infrastructure, lawlessness, and so on. It is those things that South Africans, those things negatively impact crime rate. We rank amongst the top 5 in homicide rates in the world. People are dying as crazy, the level of crime in South Africa. Corruption, all those things. It's on those bases that continues to decline because of the actual conditions on the ground that are not getting good. Not because of they're opposed to the idea of an alliance between the Communist Party and COSATU and the ANC. Only the sort of the very intellectual people can see that that is at the center of the cause of the problems. Ordinary people, they are more concerned about what's happening on the ground. And the ANC has been totally failing as it's being pressured by various affiliates to move to the left over the years, because the results on the ground are just not good. The people are not seeing the benefits of what the ANC is doing. The ANC is failing people, and people are reacting toward the ANC's failure by that decline of support of the ANC.
How can South Africa become a high-growth country?
Well, South Africa, I have on many occasions said that when you look at the countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, South Africa is a country that is easier to fix from a socio-economic perspective than most countries in Sub-Saharan Africa. South Africa is easy to fix because it's already got the foundations. It's already got a relatively better infrastructure. It's already got a better independent judiciary, right? It's got better sort of world-class financial services, a very good functioning financial services sector. There is political activism with various opposition parties trying to challenge the ANC. There is very good civil activism in the form of NGOs, people criticizing government. There is also a very much active public press. The press is active and it can criticize the government and without any negative sort of results out of that. So South Africa has the foundations to be one of the most powerful countries, not only in Africa, but in the world as well. Now, having those foundations, where are we lacking? It's exactly on public policy. So for South Africa to grow faster, to become a fast-growing economy, it needs to reduce its tax rates. That's very important, to give more money back to the people. It has to control its very much public sector that has been expanding over the years and very much damaging to the economic growth. It has to deal with the regulatory environment, where really we have to see business thriving. There are many policies like the racial affirmative action that is in place right now, called Black Economic Empowerment, that has distorted the markets in a very crazy way. In fact, even the power outages or power supply issues that we face, the ongoing blackouts, some people who work within the state-owned company that supplies electricity have said one of the problems, we cannot supply, one of the contributors to our supply issues, electricity supply issues, is because we have all these racial affirmative action policies we have to pursue as an organization for us to be able to function and provide electricity to the people. And those policies, they are making it hard for them, for the company to function. The procurement process, where if the company has to look for a specific service to be done, whether it could be the renovation or the maintenance of its infrastructure, whether it's power generating infrastructure, whether it's internal issues that have to be resolved, they have to look for a black company to do that. They have to look for a black company to do it, because they can't just take any other company. They've been told that to do this service, you need to have a black company. Look for the black company first. What if you can't find the best black companies? That's a problem. Also going to affect the operations of the company, because really either we are not going to get the black company or we'll get the third class black company, and therefore now you can't get the best service. There is no culture and mindset to say we need the best company, regardless of where it comes from, for us to be able to sort out the company that supplies electricity. There are always criteria to say, no, it has to be a black company. And if we can't find it, we have to go and look for it and spend months trying to find that company. And that has a negative impact on them, on how the company operates. And therefore, the end result would be an impact on the economy. So, if South Africa can reverse those policies, these sort of statist, more government intervention policies, then it should take off. It's got the foundations. What has been bad has been public policy, public economic policy. That has been sort of a bad, I think, by the government. And I always say that the problems in South Africa, the problems, they are structural, right? It's structural problems that have to be fixed. If we can address those structural issues, then we can begin to see the takeoff of the country. And it's not difficult to do it. It just needs people will be committed to doing it. People will give in their energy. People will who will put the interests of the citizens first, than the interests of the labor unions, the various groups, the various interest groups. But leadership that will say, we want to advance policies or implement policies that will benefit the entire country, right? Everybody needs to have an opportunity and a fair share. And that is missing in our leadership. And we've seen the damage that has done. So if we can change that aspect, South Africa becomes a rapidly growing country, and one of the most formidable in the world.
Why are you optimistic about Africa's future?
I should say Africans are the ones who can determine what it looks like, and I think because of that gives me some optimism. I have said many times that Africa is an opportunity. There's much that needs to be done in the continent. There's much collaboration that can take place at a leadership level to address various issues, the issues of security in East Africa and West Africa and Central Africa, the issues of disease in various regions in the continent. So there is an opportunity for a really strong engagement between the countries. The Africa Free Trade Agreement, it's a great initiative. It's a great program. It has to be implemented as soon as possible. There has to be the removal of hurdles and obstacles for the Africa Free Trade Agreement to become a successful program in the continent. That will make a huge impact. But again, we have seen how our leaders can mishandle things. But again, it makes me such a deal, the Africa Free Trade Agreement, sort of makes me optimistic, because again, it presents an opportunity for Africans to transform their lives for the better. And I think that's very important. And you know, there is much collaboration that can take place between how Africa engages various countries around the world, especially the developed countries, when it comes to investment, trade, and so on. So that space there is an opportunity as well. What we need to do, though, as Africans, is to try to balance our relationships with various regions around the world. We don't have to be hostile to the West. We shouldn't be. We have to trade with the West. We have to engage them constructively. We also have to be engaging with China as well as the rising power in the East. And our engagement with them also has to be constructive and more trade related. So we have to balance this thing where we have to benefit from these engagements with these countries of different cultures and different regions. So Africa is an opportunity. It's just the public policy thing that needs to be addressed, and that can be addressed by African leaders and the people, because it's even got the young population. That the population is young itself is an opportunity, because then there are structures we just need to have the public policies that will enable young people to contribute to the African continent, not to leave. So, given that scope of opportunities, that makes me optimistic about Africa. It's just a matter of, do we make use of these opportunities? Do we exploit them, if I can use that word, for the benefit of the African continent and its people? Now, that challenge has to be posed to Africans themselves.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to follow us on Twitter at @the_IATP. Also, hit the like and subscribe button below, and check out our website at www.theiatp.org.